You cannot lecture your way out of trouble that you got entertained into. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Virtue Signal. I'm Bill Whittle with my friend Alfonso Rachel, and we've been teasing this for a long time, but within the next couple of days, we're going to finally be releasing this thing that we've been talking about for the longest time. And we're not going to spoil that other than to say that Zoe and I both performed in this. Zoe is a much better actor than I am, and everybody has a better voice than I do. But with that said, we're very, very proud of it, and we don't want to spoil it other than to say we're both a couple of knights that are out on a quest, kind of a quest for revenge, because somebody has done Zoe's character wrong. And we'll let you look at the rest of it, which again should be out within the next 2 or 3 days. But with that said, Zoe, I thought it might be as good a time as any to talk about something that is sort of the meta for this whole thing. Our friend Evan Sayet wrote a book called The Kindergarten of Eden, and it is a profoundly good book with a profoundly deep insight on how the left thinks and works and operates and where they're successful and where they're not. And he coined a term that I think is so critically important. He talked about rhetorical intelligence. He says that the left is an abundance of rhetorical intelligence, not so much practical intelligence, but rhetorical intelligence. In other words, they are extraordinarily good at rhetoric, at convincing people to go along with them. They're masters of it. The fact that they have penetrated as far into society as they have with such a horrible, nasty, racist, ignorant, violent message is a testament to their astonishing skill at being able to tell stories and manipulate emotions. So I thought, well, and I know you feel this way, and virtually all of our friends in that organization that doesn't exist and probably never did feel the same way. And so let's talk about rhetorical intelligence. Let's talk about what it takes to affect people, to change their minds. One of the first things I said when I started doing this kind of commentary was that people don't vote based on what they think. They vote based on how they feel. I'm utterly convinced of this. I don't think it takes much convincing. In 2012, Romney won on every single category. You know, who's better for the economy? Romney. Who's better for foreign relations? Romney. Military? Romney. All of it, Romney, except for one. And the question that won the election was, who do you think cares more about you? And Obama won that, I think, by 94-6, something like that. Right? He cares about you as an individual. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't know you. He doesn't care about anybody other than himself, but he made you think that he did, or he made enough people think that he did. So without getting into specifics about what we're working on or anything else, let's just talk about this idea of entertainment as a means to influence people's emotions and the ability to influence people's emotions turning into politics downstream of culture.
Absolutely, man. You know, and I've been saying it for a long time, you know, and I talk about it in my audiobook, A Solid Right Cross. And before that, I was talking about it in my audiobook, Weapon of ASS Destruction. And I particularly named it Weapon of ASS Destruction because I wanted liberals to definitely check it out because, you know, they would probably do a search and probably find gay porn. But that's why they should be looking for, you know, this book and hopefully, you know, get their head right by reading it. But the thing is with Democrats, you know, and I've said this 1,000 times, they have mastered, and it's not just so much that they're mastered. There's a personality matrix where people are just wired that way. You know, Democrats, if you look at it's like a blend that goes into their worldview, that goes into their disposition. They're wired for imagination, you know, and whereas
I agree.
As where conservatives are more wired for practicality, and when in that personality matrix, there are certain things that you're going to leave out. It's kind of like making colors. You know, if you want to get the color purple, you're going to need blue and you're going to need red. If you want to get green, you're going to need yellow and you're going to need blue, right? But and to actually get those colors, that's what it takes. Something's going to have to be left out of that spectrum, though. So with conservatives in our personalities, you know, we're going to be more wired and engineered for this practical approach to life. Whereas Democrats, and even you hear it in their language all the time, they're always talking about reimagining things. You know, It's like, okay, they live in this imagination land and everything that they push is based on imagination.
Absolutely. You know, the way they want things to be. It's wishful thinking. Yeah, it's a fantasy.
Right. Whether it comes to their gender identity, all that stuff is totally imagined, right?
Right.
Imagining the child in the womb isn't human. You got to imagine all that. Imagining that your stuff is actually my stuff. Everything about what they do.
You can print money and give it to poor people and they won't be poor anymore and everybody wins.
Right? Yeah, I mean, you would think that we'd be able to solve this whole deficit problem.
Just print enough money and make everybody a millionaire. Yeah, nothing to it.
It doesn't seem to be working, but, this imaginary worldview has real world consequences and we're definitely feeling it. But my point is that if Democrats, if they're wired for imagination, then that's the vehicle that you have to communicate with them with. Just like, if you're trying to, you want to convey the truth to them, and in our audience, we're reasoned folk. We get it. That's the easy part. That's the easy sell for them. There's a whole lot of people out there, and I was one of them. There's a way that the communication comes through where it registers. And sometimes you just can't, just try to reason your way into it. We speak that language. I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back.
No, but we do. That's why we're talking about it.
Yeah, we get that. Unfortunately, though, there is a lack in the vehicle to deliver it with. You got to have a delivery system for that. And if the packaging doesn't attract the liberal, which they're totally all about, they're almost like a cat, man. It's like you give a cat a box and they're more interested in the package
than the toy. Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
you spent this money.
Spent $50,000 on cat toys, proving that theory.
Right. And you crumple that packaging up and you throw it in, the cat's in heaven, or it just wants to jump in the box. That's what these people like. They don't care. So that's what we got to do. So, okay, we need to somehow make it to where the packaging itself,
that's it,
is the sell, and make sure that the package itself is fortified with the truth. And that's what we have to get to them.
The media is the message. That's Marshall McLuhan's statement from well over half a century ago, and he was the first person to really see it.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly true. It's all based on wishful thinking and emotion. And just so we're clear on this, I remember discussing this back in the days of Obamacare, and I remember saying to a number of audiences, look, if healthcare was really free, I'd be in favor of free healthcare. What kind of a monster would I be to deny people free healthcare if it were free? Right? Of course I'd be in favor of free healthcare if healthcare was free. But it's not free. It costs money. Now we got to figure out how to pay for it. And so this kind of thing is using a little bit of rhetorical intelligence. They have there's a phenomenon going on, and the gap is widening between the progressives' ability to appeal to emotions and the conservatives' ability. The gap is actually widening. And it's widening because conservatives are running away from it. And they're running away from it because they've seen how much damage and lies can be accomplished through emotional manipulation. Mm-hmm. But this is a false premise. You're retreating from a weapon that is the weapon. What Evan Sayed understood, and what you and I understand, and what hopefully most people understood, certainly what Andrew Breitbart understood when he said politics is downstream of culture. And you got to get comfortable with this, folks, because I know many of you don't like it. I don't like it either. I really don't. I wish it were different. But people do not vote based on what they think. They vote based on how they feel. And if Barack Obama can point to a little old lady and say that if you pass this legislation, her life will be saved, I found myself thinking, maybe this Obamacare is not such a bad idea. It is overwhelmingly powerful, and we don't use it almost exclusively because we don't know how. I've said it several times that I would much, much, much rather listen to an engineer sing than drive over a bridge designed by an actor. But with that said, there's something about the conservative mindset that is not only not good at this sort of magic of entertainment, not only not good at it, they're kind of anti-good at it. An example I've used a lot is I went to see the Michael Jackson Cirque du Soleil show in Vegas many years ago. And there's a scene in there where like these 7 or 8 Michael Jackson, really, really excellent impersonators come out, and they start moonwalking up the walls. right? Backwards, moonwalking up the walls backwards. Everybody's like breathtaking. And I looked at this, and the first thought in my mind was, okay, so how are they doing this? Okay, so they obviously have some kind of wire. I can see, actually, if I look closely, I can see the harness underneath that belt there with all the sequins on it. So you probably got a computer that's moving these guys up and down relative to each other, and they're just in the center of gravity. And I realized that I was robbing myself of the moment, And so I've come to realize that part of what we need to do is we have to try and teach conservatives how to not see the wires. In a general sense, progressives walk in there and go, wow, people can actually walk up walls. Our thing is, no, people can't walk up walls. This is ridiculous. There it is, and so on. But what we miss, we're right. Okay, we're right. People cannot walk up walls. In order to appear to be walking up a wall, you have to have wires and winches and all that other stuff. But when we are so busy analyzing these things, we deprive ourselves of the joy of the moment. And the progressives are not nearly that stupid. They don't do that at all. Another really good example, very similar to this, is magic, right? Stage magic. If you go into a stage magic show and your only goal is to try to figure out how the guy did it, then you leave your wonder at the door, and you essentially have lost the joy of the experience. And this is what I mean by rhetorical intelligence. This is what I mean by the ability to tell a story versus the almost compulsive desire to destroy any magic or wonder on our part. Because we've seen the damage that it's done. We've seen how people lie through emotions. And we've seen how all of this emotional manipulation has put us in this awful, awful place. And we think the problem is the emotional manipulation, but it's not. The problem is emotional manipulation towards evil goals. Manipulation is too strong a term for what I want to do. They have to manipulate emotions because their fundamental message is so awful. We can simply express emotions and be truthful and honest and still use the weapons that we're not using. And if you don't believe me, how do you feel when you see a parade and the veterans come marching down, on the 4th of July? Or how do you feel at a baseball game when they sing the national anthem and everybody who's all completely different people get up, put their hands over their hearts and either stand or sing the national anthem? How does it make you feel? It makes me cry. So emotion is not in itself a bad thing. And by putting it off limits, we doom ourselves to failure.
Definitely, man. And, the Lord himself teaches about that, even with the manager who is, he's known as the dishonest manager. And the Lord gives the parable about him. But the long story short is, look, the children of the light don't know how to sell it. This is coming from the Lord. The children of the light don't know how to sell it. The children of the age do. You need to know how to use what the children of the age are doing. And it's just like you said, you use the tools not for nefarious means. You use the tools to promote the truth. You use the tools to do good. So you basically use the means without defiling yourself, basically. But it's still this, you want to use these effective tools to achieve a certain outcome. And that's what the Lord instructs us to do. He instructs us to be skillful. He instructs us to be creative, innovative. I want you to create new fly stuff. I want you to get out there and let people know where the party is. The Lord is a party God. He ordained a bunch of festivals. He's a party God, but he's like, don't defile yourself in the process. But I need you to use these tools, and using mediums to know how to convey emotion, as long as you are not stoking the wrong kinds of emotion. If you're
or lying.
Exactly. Yeah. You're not using these things. You're not giving people these false premises. And like you mentioned earlier about like healthcare, Jesus himself, he didn't say anything, because it irks me when they try to lean on Jesus for these socialist policies that they do, taking his name in vain. He's like, look, man, I never did any of that. My healthcare practice was private. I never told the state to do the stuff that I was doing. I didn't give power to state to come in and impose such a thing. I did that by my own volition.
And he did it. He did an awful lot of medicine without a license too, I noticed,
right?
Pretty effectively.
And if anybody was actually, fully licensed to do it, it was him. But, he is the great physician. But the thing is, they have this idea that these things are supposed to, just because you need them, they're supposed to be free. And it's like, my thing is, look, if you really value this idea of having healthcare and education and these things that you feel like you need, that tells me that they're valuable. What that tells me is that you should be willing to pay a price for it. You don't get valuable things for free. All right. If you really want quality healthcare, you should be willing to pay for it. And healthcare will be one of those things if you let the market determine it. It's like a doctor's not going to assume that I'm going to make a whole bunch of money if I charge up the yin yang for this. Right. It's like, no, dude, you're going to have to make that affordable. So people.
Yeah, the problem is with healthcare today is just regulation. It's an iron triangle between government, giant insurance agencies, and giant, HMOs and hotel, hospital chains. So.
Sure. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like people will say, man, I'm going to go get sick so I can get me some good affordable healthcare. No, it's not. It doesn't work that way. But even where it comes to, even with insurance, they've got this imaginary idea that, our HMO should just be this state issued thing where we can have. It's like, no, man, if you have insurance, they say, look, man, we don't cover pre-existing conditions. You may have an insurance company like, hey, if you give us a shot, maybe across state lines, we will, right?
Yeah. My car has 200 choices in insurance. I have 3.
Yeah. Oh, the irony. So it's like, and then somebody else is going to be like, hey, they charge a lot for that. I could charge you a little bit. I think I can get away with charging you a little bit less. So, but they have this imagination land where they can afford to be doing that. And they definitely rob themselves by allowing their common sense to be robbed by an industry of make-believe. This industry of make-believe is very effective. And that's where liberals are, because they're wired to be liars. And they succeed at an industry of make-believe because that's what it is. And like I said, it's the unfortunate thing is a lot of times they don't know when to clock out.
No, exactly. Exactly. Really, when you get right down to basics, a really excellent actor is a person who's the very best possible liar. Nothing he's saying is true, and the better a liar he is, the more convincing he is. But here's the issue, and we'll let it go after this. One of the lines I'm going to be using a lot going forward with this project of ours is, you cannot lecture your way out of trouble that you got entertained into. And the reason for that is actually pretty simple and easily understandable. If the message that somebody is trying to give you comes to you through entertainment, you enjoy the process. That's the definition of entertainment, right? Entertainment is something you do to feel good when you have free time. If you put the message into the entertainment, not only do you get the message, you get all the positive physical sensations, right? You go to a concert and you laugh, or a comic and you laugh. You go to a concert, you hear music that you like, you're partying, you're feeling good. You go to a movie, and that willing suspension of disbelief, and all your critical filters go down, and oh wow, spaceships and werewolves, and so not only does the message get to you on a much deeper level because it goes right past your conscious mind. Your conscious mind is not on duty when you're being entertained. That's why you get entertained, is to get this thing out in front of you, out of the way. And so not only do they get the message in a sort of a secret way without realizing it, but they get it so much more effectively. They get it subconsciously. They get it with all these positive emotional cues. And it is simply the reason why we're in this trouble. We think that the truth will protect us. But the truth doesn't do any good if people don't hear it. And if they don't hear it because it's being either filtered out, banned, censored, or more importantly, emotionally rejected because it's been identified as the enemy, then the only way to get this thing back is to use the tools that got us into trouble in the first place. And the advantage that we have is twofold. Number one, we're telling the truth. And number two, you can't beat the biology out of people. We are working in the direction that God and nature intended, not trying to swim upstream against all of this natural, reasonable, rational, common sense, obviously true stuff.
Absolutely, man. And the thing is, if we're going to be, the party that, that stands behind supply and demand, there has to be a show of demand for what it is that we're trying to supply. And on the flip side of that, there has to be a supply of something that people would want to demand. On a side note, a lot of times people would say, hey, Zoe, why don't you set yourself up as a nonprofit organization?
I've heard that too.
And I'm like,
many times.
Yeah. And I'm like, No, because here's the thing. A nonprofit organization is basically saying that, you know what, this wouldn't really sell in the free market. That's what
it's not worth doing, but since you have to pay the money, you might as well pay it to us rather than the government.
Yes. And to further step on some toes, that's why, we have these, there's a lot of us, in the church who are like, look, man, how the crap did we end up being given over to a 501c3 policy? How do we let the state take control over us like that? Because the thing is, when a person is going to make a donation, a tithe, if they want to call it a tithe or a sacrifice, that's not showing true value in the church when you can write that off, right? When you sacrifice a goat, you don't get that goat back at the end of the year. All right.
Yeah, it's not a goat that was going to be taken from you anyway.
That's right. And the thing is, when it comes to, like, say, for instance, you're going to pay for Netflix, you don't expect to get your money back. You expect to pay that money. It was worth it for you to give up X amount of dollars and get entertained, but you're not going to get that money back. And you don't get to write that off. In terms of setting up as a nonprofit organization, even though I appreciate the idea, that doesn't show the value in the free market where people are saying, you know what, I am willing to part with this money and I'm not looking to write it off because I know that I'm going to get some good entertainment that I believe in. That's what it's supposed to be. And so we want to be we want to really walk it like we talk it when we talk about supply and demand. Show the demand. I mean, we see more people giving attention to these hoodlums and these heathens out there making this entertainment. Even if you don't like it, they get attention. You're going to see blogs about it and you're going to see it on the different news outlets. They getting their attention. More attention than people are getting who are trying to speak against these things and want to do it creatively. That stuff costs money. It costs money. It costs time, and the resources that go into fighting this legion that we're up against it's a big mountain. It's not insurmountable, but it takes a lot of resources. So we do want to be able to supply these things, and it has to be met by the demand. So which one's going to give the trust where it's like, you know what, we need this. Somebody out there's got to, like us. Somebody's out there trying to do it, and we want to get behind them folks, right? And then on our part, we're like, well, you know what, we want to supply it. Let's do business.
Let's do business. Yeah, and kind of almost as a, special gift to our customers, we save the country and civilization as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You're going to get your chance to find out soon enough, ladies and gentlemen. And when you do, we're going to ask you to become a part of it. So start thinking, but we're not going to ask you to become a part of it without providing an awful lot of evidence and an awful lot of data. Because we've done our homework on this one, and we've been doing our homework on this one for years and years and years and years. I have so much fun working with Zoe, and it's so nice to be able to work with him in entirely different worlds of fantasy or science fiction. That's where we'll be able to do our best work, without question, our best work. And he understands it, and I understand it, and I hope you understand it too. For all of the members of BillWhittle.com who make the show possible, thank you. I'm Bill Whittle. This is Alfonso Rachel, and we'll see you next time on The Virtue Signal.